All right. So today we're going to talk about posture a little bit, if that sounds good. And then we'll have
Yeah.
some time for discussions and we'll open it up. Um, so posture is we won't talk about it necessarily in the terms that like I think we often find ourselves in, which is like good posture, bad posture. And we kind of like draw this dividing line. What I'm more interested in unpacking today is more this idea of how posture affects our breath and then this relationship with the body and the brain. I find that way more compelling. And so even when I'm doing like a posture assessment in the clinic, like I'm not looking at all of these kind of the minutia of things. What I'm really looking at is just like broad strokes. Is the head sitting above the shoulder girdle and the thoracic cavity? And is that positioned well over the hips? Right. And that's about as far as I go. So there's actually a really popular mnemonic or phrasing that we use in the clinic as well, which is your best posture is your next posture. And what that really points to is just this idea that like we're not designed to be static, right? So sitting gets a bad rap because we just do it for a long duration. But if we were all standing around, like or like your job required you just to like stand in one position for a really long period of time, it's like, well, then standing would get a bad rap, right? It's like, here's all the downsides of like standing in place. It's bad for this joint and creates all of these other problems. So it's not so much that like, yeah, there's like this good posture, bad posture type of thing. Um, but we have to overlay the context, which is how long are we there? What's the load on our body? And yeah, just does it make sense for um, our daily flow and weekly flow? If I'm back squatting something heavy, if we're lifting something heavy off the ground, like the posture that we're using, is going to have some advantages, one way or the other. So, what what wasn't like immediately obvious to me was that the breath and posture are inseparable. Like I used to think about those as like two different things, but they're really inextricably tied. And so there's this really tight kind of bidirectional feedback loop that happens. So if we change our breath, we change our posture and vice versa. So what might be a really good place to start is actually just to see without moving, like just where you're at, like take a deep breath in. And I'll have you do a couple of these, right? So just take a really deep breath in. And then after the first one, allow yourself to change your position a little bit and see if that position change allows you to take a deeper breath. And this positional change that we find ourselves doing when we move into a better breath really does oftentimes move us to what we typically think about as like good posture. Yeah. So oftentimes when we just focus on taking a quality deep breath in, one that moves air a little bit easier, what we often find is that people stack their rib cage over their hips, head starts to be, moves over the shoulders and maybe a little bit of chin kind of tucks down a little bit. And what we didn't do was here's a 5-step process to find your best posture. What we did is we just prioritized the breath. Yeah. And um you might have heard me talk about the upstream effect. And what we do is we put the breath and posture together at the top, right? And that's where we we can kind of drop in, and then everything below that, everything downstream is just easier to affect. So just for review, if you remember this one, so it's breath and posture, then it goes into nervous system. Nervous system then affects our emotions. Our emotions then dictate our, influence our thoughts, thoughts into actions slash behavior. And then if we do enough of these things, that kind of becomes our identity. And then downstream of that is outcomes, right? The change in our 3D reality. So what's kind of cool then is like, yeah, we talk quite a bit about the breath, of course, in this space, right? On this channel, on this page. But the posture, the position that we find ourselves in is just as important because if we change the posture, we can influence the breath, right? And they're just kind of always doing this melding together. There's another phrase that I use quite a bit. You might have heard me sound like a broken record, but if you can't breathe in a position, you don't own it. If you can't breathe in a position, you don't own it. Or if you can breathe very easily in that position, then you own it. So what that really points to is this idea of we're not going to occupy certain shapes unless we can breathe very easily in it, right? We're going to find ways to maybe like navigate out of it. So one that I think about or I see quite a bit in the like clinical setting, especially is when we try to correct posture from the shoulder up, a really common exercise that we do is a chin tuck, whether it's in sat, whether we're sitting, whether we're lying down. And it's just this reversal of the forward head posture. So it's like making a double chin, but it's the reversal of the curvatures at the neck. Yeah. And people can do that. But what I was discovering, I was like, I think they're holding their breath. Like, I think they do that and they're like bracing for impact and then they go back off and then they take a breath. So the question is like, how likely is it that they're actually going to stay in that position or use it at any point throughout the day? If they have to hold their breath, if that's what their nervous system is kind of linking together, when I do this, I hold my breath. It's not going to be very comfortable, right? If you're not breathing, like nothing else matters, right? It becomes priority number one. So in this scenario, what we would do is we would bring someone into that shape, into that body position, and then just make sure that they can start to breathe very easily in it again, right? And so this is going to start to shift things in the mechanical sense. We know that our breathing apparatus includes our shoulder muscles and our neck muscles, and the neurologic component, which is just like safety and do you feel comfortable and relaxed there, right? So if I'm trying to change more of this like static position, like just a position that someone's in all, for hours per day, I won't get their head over their shoulders. Well, then we have to bring the breath into it and hold the position, see if we can just breathe very, very comfortably, right? And then that's going to start to integrate that shape and position into normal life, right? And so that's just one example, but we could start to apply this to a number of different avenues, shapes, and positions. So the same is true when we look at like some of like these higher level things. I think the back squat is a really good one to look at because when you get to a high intensity back squat, we're taught to do the inhale, brace, kind of squeeze down a little bit, and that creates a ton of pressure and stability within our two cavities. Sounds like a good strategy. Do that. So that's a good technique to use if we're just doing one repetition. But when we look at all of our movement practice, that's a very, very small sliver of what we're doing. So the majority of what we do throughout the day is sub maximal, right? 99% of it, at least. So when we're doing these sub maximal things, including lifting what feels like 50%, 60%, we should still be able to have this breath that accommodates that movement, that action. If we can breathe a little bit more reasonably, that has that same type of effect that we talked about with the chin tuck, right? It makes it more, it allows us to integrate that movement into the rest of life. The reason that most of us back squat or weight train, especially with a functional movement like a squat, is so that we have carryover into other aspects of our lives, right? Because we squat throughout the day. Even when we walk upstairs, that's like a single leg squat, like that shape. When we lunge, yeah. So we want to practice normal breathing through these like submaximal things. Now, when it comes to why people have adapted these these kind of strange patternings of breath, one of which could just be like an injury, right? Where I often think about this akin to walking patterns. So if you sprain your ankle, you injure your knee, we start to limp. And that limping pattern like it's kind of a nice thing to do when you're like babying it. So our pattern shifts and we're actually kind of like putting less pressure on the injured tissue, muscle, tendon, bone, whatever it might be. But if we continue to walk that way after the injury is healed, that's going to create some other problems, right? So the same thing happens with the breath, where the body adapts and starts to breathe in a certain pattern to accommodate a certain situation or context. But it doesn't self-correct oftentimes in the same way that like some people just continue to limp. The thing is healed, but they haven't repatterned it, right? We do that in the clinic all the time, like just trying to get people to walk normal again. They have the capacity to do it. It's just the patterning. So we do the same thing with the breath, right? And again, we have to tie it in with the position that we're in. So if they're trying to take this like deep quality breath, it's going to be very tough to do that in a slumped position, right? We just can't breathe as deeply in that shape. It doesn't work. So we like to think about our canister as like a cylinder with like two compartments, right? So depending on who you ask, we might have five diaphragms. And so we often just call the abdominal diaphragm like diaphragm, and that's what we're usually talking about. So, but the full name is abdominal diaphragm because we also have the pelvic floor, which is the pelvic diaphragm. And usually those are the two that we're focused on. Yeah. And then just for our own information, the next one would be the space basically at the collarbones. So the thoracic diaphragm. The fourth one is the tongue. And then the top one is kind of between the just south of the brainstem. It's called the tegmentum cerebelli. Some Latin. We don't need to really focus on that too much. Really, really, what we're going to talk about is the abdominal diaphragm, pelvic diaphragm, because those are the ones that we have a lot of control over. And so when we're positioned like a cylinder, that's not only where stability is at its optimum, but also our ability to just move as much air as possible. So it actually becomes a lot easier. Um, and we'll remember that the diaphragm being the ceiling and the pelvic floor being the floor um, play multiple roles, right? So they're obviously part of our breathing mechanism, but they also play a really big role in stability. And then when we look at the walls, This is our obliques, transverse abdominis, multifidus, and it's just the walls, right? And so we can pressurize that cylinder best when things are oriented well. So again, back to like when I'm just doing a very simple posture assessment, I'm just looking for like, are they stacked over top of one another? And then is it tilted? So what we can commonly see is that like the rib cage can be up like this, and then the pelvis kind of down like this. And so now we kind of have like this thing happening. I don't know, let's see if I can do it. There. So like this thing is happening, and then they're trying to like pressurize this way. And so the force wants to kind of naturally push out the fronts into the front abdominal wall. And again, there's nothing wrong with that as long as we're not there for too long and we're not like loading with a lot of intensity. So we can really think about intensity as those two things combined. Like, what's the load? How long am I doing it? Right? So, again, 1 rep max back squat. It's like, let's get really positioned really well. But if I'm doing an air squat or I'm just gonna like sit in the bottom of my squat for a little bit, things are gonna tilt, right? We're gonna lose that stacked nature. And is that good or bad? It's like it's fine. It's fine. How long am I gonna be there? It's like, well, how long have you exposed yourself to that position in the past before? Right? Because if you travel outside of the US, a lot of countries hang out, they sit in the bottom of the squat, right? And they've owned it because they can breathe very comfortably in it, right? They have the requisite mobility. So is it a safe thing to do? It's like, yeah, absolutely. Like humans have been doing that for eons, right? Look, watch how a toddler squats. Like they make it look so effortless. And it's not because they're crazy strong, it's because they have the requisite mobility and then they can breathe just fine there, right? But probably because we sit in chairs a lot and we just don't spend much time there, we don't own that position. So as we start to expand our movement capacity, this buffet of movements that we can pick from, we have to start to bring the breath into the equation. So if I wanted to get more comfortable hanging out in the bottom of my squat, I can't hold my breath. Like it's going to tell my nervous system that like, oh, I need to brace for impact and it's not going to feel very comfortable. I have to start to like just work my way into it. Because, like, yeah, maybe it is a little bit like that when we first start. Yeah. I go down, like, it feels stiff. You can maybe do like the old man grunt. You're like, ugh, you know? Um, but then you just start to, like, okay, is it safe? Like, yeah, things feel fine. Starting to warm up. Things are loosening up a little bit. Breathing it expands, it opens up and becomes more comfortable. And so we actually want to, we can emphasize that to really accelerate that process, or at very least not stifle it. Yeah. Um, so one more thing, one more thing. When we think about, so another big component with posture is that it is, if we jump down to the emotional level, right? So again, posture, breath, nervous system, emotions, right? So we're kind of jumping to emotions. We know there's these like really wonderful cross-culture studies that have been done. I don't know if it was like sociologists or what have you, or emotional psychology, but when we think about certain positions of the body, regardless of the specific culture, because we can look at people who, smaller tribes and villages that haven't been exposed to Hollywood media or westernized media. And so they're like, if they see this, they're like, oh yeah, that's winning and that's confidence and things of that nature. And then if I were to say like, hey, there's someone in the next room and they're not having a good day, their cat just died. They're just like sitting in the chair. Can you like go in and talk to them? Like you can already picture what they're probably doing. They're like, oh, they're like maybe their heads in their hands, but they're slumped over. And what's their breathing doing in both of those situations? It's like we can start to, kind of elaborate on what we suspect the breath is doing because of that position. So yeah, there's always this opportunity for this bi-directional feedback loop, right? We say the breath both affects and reflects the state of the nervous system and so forth. And at face value, that might be like, it might kind of sound like I'm trying to say something like profound, but a lot of things are like that. Stretching both affects and reflects the state of muscles and tendons, right? It's like, oh yeah, it makes a change, and then it also tells you about your own body. Like, I went to stretch and it feels tight. Like, oh, it gives me information, right? I ran up the stairs and I'm huffing and puffing, right? Not only did it improve my cardiorespiratory endurance, but also gave me some information about like how I'm doing, right? So there's a lot of things that are doing both at the same time. So yeah, unsurprisingly, like it's all connected, right? We know this, but oftentimes we have to zoom in on these like specific examples for that to just really register with how we think about our own health and well-being. So yeah, I think the emotional component's really cool. You know, in the same way that we can both affect and reflect with the breath and stretching and all these other things, we can do the same thing with postures, right? Certain positions that we assume. Um, if I stand like this Superman style, it's like that can happen a little bit more naturally if I'm feeling confident and like a superhero. But I can also just assume these positions, breathe in the way that feels natural to that position, and then you will start to have these associated emotions as a byproduct. Yeah, so pretty cool. We all want to feel good. A lot of people want to feel confident. We want to feel these things. So it's important to, yeah, I think just bring the breath into it, bring our position into it, and then we can start to just have these internal sensations, these emotions, just follow suit. And if we start to make this more of our like regular practice, like again, the downstream effects of those is like, yeah, my thoughts are going to change, my actions, like I'm going to show up differently with my coworkers and people at home and everyone that I meet online, so on and so forth. And I think that's really the compelling part here. So yeah, posture. Hopefully that kind of changes the view of this good and bad posture that I think a lot of us were kind of indoctrinated into. I certainly was like growing up, like, this is good posture and this is bad posture. It's like, well, let's kind of unpack that a little bit. Even like maybe like one more thing, like militant posture. Like it's just the full reversal of the curvature. And like that's just going 100% one direction. Is it easy to breathe there? Right? All of the things that we talked about. It's like it might be a little tough unless you practice it. Same with like when we look at like traditional meditation practice, you see like a statue of Buddha, right? In that position, that might be really challenging for a lot of people when they first get in there. Like breath is really restricted, but as you continue to practice that shape, like it gets easier. The breath definitely becomes easier there. So yeah, that's how we can bring into like all of our stretches too. Yeah. So yeah, um, I'll pause there, and if you have any questions or comments, let me know.
Oh, it makes sense. You know, uh, with posture and breathing and emotions, think about that sometimes, especially if I'm tired and I start to slump over.
Yeah.
I get more tired, or
Right.
the same
Right.
thing. If I start to feel sad, start to slump over, and you
Mhm.
feel more sad because you can't breathe. If you just remember to, maybe that's why it helps, like to kind of just like lay down, some situations, you know. Lay down if you're tired, but like stretch it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, you don't have the energy to stand up, but if you lay down, it kind of stretches it out and you can breathe. I feel like. Does that make sense? It's kind of the same, is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Um,
Um,
yeah. So
yeah.
there's this saying, right? We say like, oh, when someone gets deflated,
Yeah.
right? It's like
Yeah,
it's kind
exactly.
of literal. Like there's a little bit of like a literal component to it. It's like
'Cause yeah, you
literally
just hunch
the
over,
lungs just kind of
shoulders go down. Yeah,
yeah.
and then your thoughts kind of do whatever they do and
Mhm.
you get stuck.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, so actually I shared an idea. I posted this one to Instagram
mhm.
yesterday. And one way to think about what we're doing with posture and the breath in like its simplest form is like high energy position versus low energy position. So that's one, right?
Yeah.
So you're talking
I
about
need you
slumps,
versus
like, well, that's a
energy.
low energy position.
Hmm.
But then we overlay like what we're trying to do. Um, and by that I mean like I'm trying to be high energy, but I'm slumped,
Yeah.
right? So a really common example of that is like I'm writing an email, right? I'm like trying
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
productive,
Right.
but I'm like hunched over, right?
Yeah.
Um, I'm I'm on my phone, like screens is a big one, right? I'm slumped, but my brain
Yeah.
is like doing this thing, so then my breathing goes up, right? So there's like this mismatch here.
Yeah. For
And
sure.
so then part of the solution to that is to assume this, get into a higher energy position, right? Which could be like this here, but then shift our breath and our nervous system to low energy, right? So it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what often happens very naturally in meditation, right? So we keep this position that helps us to, not feel so dull, so apathetic, so sleepy. So the position actually helps us to stay alert, but then
Hmm.
we allow the breath to really kind of settle. And then we can
Yeah.
always make subtle adjustments from there too. So that can become part of the practice as well, right? Okay, I can shift my position. Oh, maybe I'm going to go shoulders. I'm getting tired. Maybe shoulders back a little bit more, just get a little bit taller, right?
Yeah.
Maybe give my breath a little bit more energy and just shift it. Ooh, I'm feeling kind of like, anxious. I'm too up. Like, okay, well then maybe I do actually just kind of like take that sigh,
Yeah. 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 That makes
right?
sense.
Yeah.
Let it all
And
out. Like go back up.
yep, exactly. Yeah, so it's kind of like this, it's the matching or the mismatching that we're trying to accomplish. So, yeah, like this is def sitting like this and breathing like you're about to have a panic attack or something like that is like that's a huge mismatch. Right?
Definitely.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, when we multiply that position with this type of breathing over a long period of time, that's actually where we start to see these long-standing changes in our muscle stiffness and tone and
Hmm.
fascia changes, right? Like someone's spine is just kind of stuck in a position now, right? It's
Yeah.
really tough for them to kind of break out of that. And so you mentioned lying down, right? It's like it was a fantastic way for us to kind of unravel some of this stiffness. So those muscles no longer have to play the role of anti-gravity, right?
Yeah.
Supporting my position. And then now they can just focus on the other thing, which is breathing, right? So yeah, just
Hmm.
take one. And so that can be like a
Yeah.
really fantastic way to do that. So yes, spine is straighter now that we're lying down. So that is kind of more of that alert shape or alert position. But obviously we're lying down, so it's not really. But then we just focus on that really relaxing breath,
Yeah.
and that starts to kind of repattern in a way that would be like, all right, we're going to, you know, Mr. Jones, let's walk in this certain way, and we're going to focus on our heel strike and repattern
Baby
our
step kind of
walking
thing.
again. Yeah, it's kind of like that because it's not used to that shape. It's like, oh, when I'm long, this is it pulls my ribs up, and then that kind of creates again this kind of cascade of effects where it's just like, oh, we're alert now. And
Yeah.
that also points to another thing, which is like when people go to lie down for bed and they've been doing this other pairing for, all day long, and then
Yeah.
now they've extended their spine, ribs are up even a bit more because that's the normal pairing. It's like now my mind is racing, right? The nervous system has shifted, and then
Yeah.
our emotions and thoughts are following suit, right? That's what's supposed to happen, right? But it's just
Yeah.
because we've sort of adapted to an environment that is, in the grand scheme of things, it's a relatively new environment. Sitting at a computer for a long period of time, staying static in these like slump positions and breathing a certain way. Yeah, it's a
Hmm.
new thing. So yeah, I think that's why a lot of people are feeling, stressed out too, right? Hence the
Yeah.
nervous
Can't
system, the
breathe.
emotional component.
And you go home on your phone, you're like, eh.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's like if you look from the side, it's like, is your head stacked over your shoulders? It's like, no, it's like in the middle of your lap.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
yeah.
And then you feel all messed up after, like, shit, I think I gave myself some brain damage. I just cut off the oxygen flow while flooding too much dopamine in.
Yeah, it's a lot.
That's-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot
Yeah.
of people, I don't
No,
know
like,
anybody who like feels good after they've been scrolling for any length of time.
no. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, not at all. Like, and since I drive so much for what I'm doing right now, I've got this car in position, like seats pretty much almost straight up.
Mm.
And I know when I first started, when I first started, I was farther away from the seat, so my arms were like this, but then I noticed it was hard to breathe because then my chest was constricted. Does that make
Mm.
sense?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
You know? So I could get into the belly, but not my chest. So what I did is I started sitting closer, so my arms are pulled back more.
Mm.
So it's more I can drive and relax. Well, I mean, because you gotta drive and focus, but then it's easier to. 'Cause this is pretty much my driving position right here, and sit back in the chair and just build my diaphragm up, you know.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
I slump forward, if I slump, I'm too damn close to the steering wheel. That's how I'm pretty close to the steering wheel. I'm literally like maybe little less than a foot.
Hmm.
So I figured this is probably good, and it keeps me alert.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good one. Driving is a little bit, maybe a lot of bit like that little toggling that we're like talking about, right? Because we need to stay alert, but like you don't need to be like so like way up and stressed out. We know that like our performance actually takes a dip. We just don't make as good of decisions if we're too wired.
Yeah,
So there's
yeah, you're
yeah.
right.
So you'll have some opportunities to, adjust up and down in that same way. And your position can be a really good one
Yeah,
to kind of play with if you do have a little bit of wiggle room on, yeah, arm position, seat position,
yeah,
stuff of that
yeah,
nature.
yeah. Yeah, I pulled this, because it's got the telescoping steering wheel, so I pulled it out towards me, got the seat closed, angled it up, all
Yeah,
that
yeah.
stuff.
Nice. Nice, nice.
Yeah, yeah, man.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Anything else coming to mind?
For me, I know for sure, like if I start to slump over and I don't watch myself, I'm gonna start having a lot of negative thoughts. I know that for
Mm.
sure. Ever since I've started doing all this with you, and if I'm kind of in a low mood, I'll notice that I'll catch myself slumped over and I'll catch myself spinning,
Mm.
and I'm like, holy shit, dude, no, just sit up, just sit up straight, just sit up. That's all you gotta do right now, and then all right, breathe a little bit. And then all of a sudden it's like I snap out of it. It's like I go from being underwater to above the water. And it's crazy. It's literally crazy. It's just because it's just hunch over, can't breathe. Just Just sit up. You know?
Yeah.
Just open up your chest. Let your diaphragm fill itself up. Let it go down, all the way down.
Yeah, that's very cool.
So
Yeah, thanks for sharing
yeah,
that insight.
it took a while. It took months for me to be able to like start catching it. But once I started catching it, so I was just stuck in it. That was just me. That was my position. And then all of a sudden, hey, you don't have to be like this. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's huge. Because if you want to, if you want to have just, that like I think about like lead dominoes as well. It's just like, well, what's the first thing that I should push that then's just gonna make everything else easier? It's kind of just, that's kind of really what we're talking about too. Just a different analogy with the upstream effect. It's like, yeah, if I just change the thing
Yeah.
at the top, it's like, yeah, it's just going to make everything else a little bit easier. Like,
Yeah.
because there's other points that we could kind of like come at it. It's like, can we change our thoughts? It's like, yeah, if I play a song, if I listen to an audiobook, or if I
Yeah.
recite a mantra, it's like, yeah, you can change your thought. You're now thinking about those words, but it's it's just at a different point along those lines. Like we could change our actions, we could change our words. But yeah, like there's just more pressure, like more influence top down than there is bottom up, right? So yeah, I think that's
Hmm.
huge, right? It's like posture change, and then just know that like the rest of this stuff is coming. There's no way it's not.
Yeah.
Like it's going to change all of those things. It's going to shift it a little bit, maybe a lot of it. Yeah, so that was very cool.
Hmm.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Thank you for, teaching me and everything.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah.